Hello everybody and welcome to what is a very special day for me because this is my first ever motorcycle review. So regardless of whether you're a regular or this is your first time watching, allow me to extend you an extra special welcome to the channel that is JayEmm Friends. For those who don't know me, my name is James and I run another YouTube channel called JayEmm on Cars. However, bikes have always been a big part of my life. When I was young, I got my bike license before my car, and the first few years of my motoring life were spent more on two wheels than in four. However, as is often the case, life got in the way. I moved to the city, didn't really have any money, and eventually I ran out of time to enjoy bikes, but the passion never went away. And I'd always promised myself I'd get my grandfather's old Triton back on the road one day. Then, last year, I found myself in the position where that was going to be a reality. So I made it happen, and if you want to see more about that particular journey, there's plenty of videos already on it. And as soon as the Triton fired back into life after 28 years laying dormant, it also lit a spark in me, and I realised bikes had to come back into my life in a big way. But the thing with the Triton, it's an old bike and a family heirloom. So pretty early on, I decided I needed something modern to go alongside it, which I now have in the form of a KTM Super Duke 1290R Evo. But I would be the first to admit that's a lot of motorbike. I would wager more than just about anybody actually needs. I bought it because I wanted it. It is a wonderful thing for sure, and with luck, there'll already be a video out on it. However, what if you're still restricted to an A2 category license and you're looking to move up to your first big bike? Or perhaps you're like me, you've been out of the saddle for quite a while and you feel like this is still a step or two away. Well, today I'm going to present to you all the motorbike you may ever need. It's this, the Honda CB500F. And although to many this has always been the least exciting of all motorcycles, it actually has a very special place in my heart, because about 15 years ago, it was a CB500 that gave me my first big bike experience when I did the old Honda Ron Haslam Race School over at Donington Park. And so, as in this series, I want to talk to you not as an experienced road tester or racer, because I'm neither of those things, but instead as a fellow returning biker that really does consider themselves a beginner all over again. I thought this was the perfect first bike to review. And so I want to say a huge thank you to Honda for lending me this, my first ever press motorcycle. And having lived with it for a little bit now, I'm happy to say I think I made the right choice. And I'd also like to say a massive thank you to our very first sponsor, B-Moto, the specialist insurance company run by bikers for bikers. Because if you are thinking about getting back on two wheels or maybe migrating to a big bike for the first time, insurance is certainly going to be something on your mind. And regardless of who you are or whatever it is that you ride, B-Moto should be able to give you a great deal. We have a special JayEmm hotline set up. You'll find the number in the description down below. And of course, if you just want to give them a ring, mention me, and we'll get a kickback on any sales that they make, which of course will all go straight into the fuel tank, helping us make more content for all of you. The CB500F is part of a quintet of motorcycles from Honda, all built around a common 471cc parallel twin A2 compatible liquid-cooled engine that develops 47 horsepower and 43 Nm of torque. You have this, the CB500F, which represents the standard naked bike. Then you have the CL500, which is the scrambler-looking, retro-inspired affair. Then there's the CB500X, the more upright, adventurous and rugged-looking affair designed to appeal to those that one day fancy a Transalp, a Tiger or a BMW GS. Then, for those looking for a more laid-back affair, you have the CMX500 Rebel, and finally, those looking for a sporty bike will find it in the CBR500R, meaning that with this engine, Honda have got just about every niche covered. And the first thing I noticed about the CB500F is the styling, because I think this is a pretty darn good looking bike. It's fairly compact in its dimensions, but it's got plenty of angles, interesting pieces of design. So though as an unfaired bike there isn't much in the way of bodywork, what it has does add to the look of it. And I, as a young person or returning biker, would be proud to own something like this. It's far from the sort of old blancmange affair that a regular commuter bike of 20 years ago would have been. Okay, it's no Ducati monster, but still, it's a fine-looking beastie, and I'm sure of great interest to those returning to the saddle after 10, 15 or 20 years away. It's also not overburdened with electronic gizmos. Get on something like that, and if you're the sort of person that struggles with a smartphone, you may feel a little bit uncomfortable. This, though, takes a refreshingly old-school approach. So in terms of safety systems, you've got your ABS, and that's about it. There is no traction control. Doesn't need it. There is no anti-wheelie. Definitely doesn't need it. Nor is there even adjustable suspension. It gives you simply what you need and just about nothing else. The only real difference you're likely to notice between it and, say, its predecessor is the fact it's now adopted a digital display, which I'm not actually a huge fan of because it's a little on the small side and can be a touch hard to read. The model has actually been around for a decade now, being introduced back in 2013. However, naturally, Honda have continued to evolve it and improve it. 2019 saw the introduction of this styling, and in the intervening years, they've continued to make other updates, including to the fueling system, which is now supposed to be a little smoother and easier, to the brakes, which changed from a single setup at the front to a twin, with slightly smaller discs but more impressive 4-piston calipers replacing the old 2. There have also been other changes throughout the bike, including the introduction of a new swinging arm and a radiator. Though the actual weight of the bike hasn't changed, what has is the weight distribution. So whereas the old one had about a 3% bias to the rear, this one is now relatively even. In spite of this shift forward, the riding position itself remains relatively upright, and the bike feels very natural. Even those coming from a scooter should find it comfortable to be on, at least for shorter rides of up to an hour. If you are out for longer on a frequent basis, I definitely want at least a windscreen to make things a little more comfortable. At a 785mm seat height and 189 kg wet weight, it's also a very manageable bike. Though I am 5'10", I am short of leg. I wear just 29-inch jeans, and even with my driving shoes on, I can still flat-foot this bike with both feet. It's very easy, very manoeuvrable, and even, if you have a little moment like I did there, it's not daunting. Just yesterday, I bumped into a lady shorter than I, who's currently on a CB125. I let her have a sit on this, and she said it felt very much the same as her bike. In fact, all the controls here are virtually identical, including the horn, which is in a rather daft place because when I watched the review by Mr. Darcy and the old man of this bike, he accidentally tooted the horn, and I thought, what a wally. Then the day after, I did the same thing. It's quite fundamental, that. I don't know why they had to put it there and couldn't put it where the indicators are, because let's face it, of horn and indicator, hopefully you'll need indicator a little bit more. But the biggest mechanical change for many will be these new forks. They are upside down items from Showa, of course, and they are separate function items with big pistons, though they don't have any form of adjustability. But they do look rather nice. And whether you want to use this as a commuter or a tourer, it's also got great range, thanks to the fact it's got a 17-litre tank and an economy of 80 mpg, meaning you should be able to get just over 300 miles between stops. That's just shy of 500 kilometres. Certainly better than that thing over there achieves. Though it is one of the heavier bikes in the sub 500cc class, it is also one of the more powerful, using the full 47 horses allowed by A2 licensing restrictions. And at £6,099, it is also neither the cheapest or most expensive. In fact, as far as I see it, this has really just two big problems. The first of which is the CB500R, because that is a bike that has twice the cylinders, precisely twice the power, meaning it can still be restricted to A2 levels, and is available for just £1,700 more. The major drawback being the fact it is a heavier and taller bike, meaning those that are comfortable on this might not be so happy with that. But perhaps the most appealing bike to me would be the CB750 Hornet, which has marginally less power than the 650, but also a hair more torque. It's still a twin, like this, and weighs almost exactly the same, plus is closer in size. So if you fancy the idea of this, but do think you need just a touch more grunt, regardless of whether you're on an A2 license or a full one, the Hornet could still be a good shout. And even better, it's slightly cheaper than the 650 at just over £7,200, meaning it's about 1,200 quid on top of this. And for me, I think it's 1,200 quid likely worth spent. But what's the 500 like to ride? I have loved just about every minute I've had on this bike. And that's really important because in reality, I think I've only actually ridden something like a dozen to 15 times this year, which is effectively all the riding I've done for the past 6 years. And so every single time I go out on a bike, it's a big deal. And with this, every time I've gone out, I've decided to go just that little bit further. And that to me really is the only measure that any bike ever needs to pass. This does it with flying colours. But of course, that's not really of any help to you, is it? What is? Well, first off, let's start with all the controls. They're nice, they're light, they're easy to modulate. This clutch, which has a slipper in it, in case you do get things wrong, is a joy. I mean, not quite one finger, but it's not far off either. Brakes, both lovely, really smooth. I haven't had a problem stopping on this at all. The controls, as I already mentioned, are on the basic side, but that means that there really isn't anything on here that should sort of catch you unawares. I still don't like the display here. I think that could be certainly bigger and clearer. For the money, I feel like Honda could do something just a touch better. The gearbox is an absolute joy, even finding neutral, fairly easy. It's never been a problem around town. When you're at low speeds to manoeuvre, it's a joy. It certainly feels heftier than just about any 125 that I can think of, but still very manoeuvrable. You'd have to struggle, I think, to actually drop this. I mean, you can lean it over a long way and still recover it. I think this is a great bike for riders, both old and new. In terms of the power then, well, having just come off the KTM, which has more than triple both the power and torque of this. In fact, I think in terms of power, it's got nearly 4 times as much. Obviously, this did feel a touch lethargic, but up to about 60-70 mile an hour, if you use the revs and the gears, it's more than quick enough. And after a short while, that initial frustration actually turned into joy, because you see, the thing with bikes like that is that you have to be respectful of them at all times. You have to be mindful of what they're capable of. This though, despite the fact that conditions just haven't been on my side this week, you soon learn to keep it in the top end of the rev range, and you start working your way through bends, thinking that you're going, of course, a lot faster than you really are. I even think it actually makes a fairly decent sound. Ahead of this, I checked out a few other reviews to see what it was that I needed to know, and some of them criticised it, but I actually think it sounds pretty decent. I certainly didn't have any issues with it. I know people would be tempted to put a pipe on, but I don't really think I would probably bother. I have no issues with it as it is. If I was going to do that, I do it really for aesthetics rather than sound. The economy has been fantastic. I haven't really even had the opportunity to put fuel in it because Honda delivered it with nearly a full tank. And quite shockingly, they also gave it to me with just 22 miles on the clock. I mean, I figured it'd need a running in or something like that, but apparently not. I mean, I can't even unwind the KTM fully until I've done 600 miles on it, and I've only thus far achieved about 60 or so. This, though, is apparently all good to go. The red line is at about 8.5 or so, but you don't really need to take the bike all the way there if you simply want to make decent progress. My one real criticism would be the fact that if you are at, say, motorway speed, 70 mile an hour or so, you're doing over 5,000 RPM. And it feels like the bike could do with a much taller 6th or even a 7th gear, as unlikely, of course, as that is. And I think it would pull it quite happily, plus make it just a slightly more pleasant thing to be on. All the stuff you look at is fairly decent. The mirrors have been pretty good. This one, for some reason or other, just isn't quite as useful as this. I can see a lot more out of here than I can here. I think the placement may be slightly different. In fact, I can see this one is a touch higher because it's mounted on the brake reservoir here, so that does make a bit of a difference. In any case, it's been nice, easy to ride, easy to use, and I think this fits the brief absolutely perfectly of being a bike that just about anybody can first off jump on, and then more importantly, enjoy. So, I hope this has been a somewhat helpful and informative video. Please give me all of your feedback. I need as much as I can get because I want to try and improve these, do better, and hopefully next year, when the sun reappears, I'm going to try and get a whole bunch of different bikes on the channel and feature, well, as much as I can really. So then, all that remains to be said is a massive thank you to Honda for lending me the bike, to B-Moto for sponsoring the channel, and to you for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button, comment down below, and subscribe if you haven't already. It makes a huge difference to a new channel, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye-bye.